Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Q&A. In addition to this video where we're going to be talking mostly about Guild Wars 2, on my alternate channel, Concrete Ducks, there'll be a link in the description. I did put out a very casual video today where I was talking about using my tanky warrior, who's like nothing but pure Nomad's tank during the Triple Trouble Worm encounter. It was very casual compared to most of the videos I do. It was all one take. There was absolutely no editing, no forethought into the stuff I talk about. But if you're interested, there will be a link in the description down below. Maybe you'll agree with some of the stuff I say there, maybe not. Anyway, so over here we're going to be doing some Q&A. If you guys want to leave questions for me, you can always do that. I always check the comments of the previous Q&A when choosing the questions to address in the upcoming video, so that's where you can leave them. Anyway, a clarification on something I said last time we did a Q&A. I was talking about how Guild Wars 2 had been dropped to just be a $20 game. I was completely wrong about that, a bit foolish really. It was just on sale again for $20 for a little while. So it is still a $50 game. Related to that, someone did ask a question. This was from Entropy Embrace 1, who said, about Guild Wars 2 now being only $20, what other MMORPG or video game even was ever still full price full 2 years after release? I think it's really extraordinary that Guild Wars 2 has been selling at $50 for so long. Interesting thought really, and it does come as a surprise, but maybe it shouldn't in my opinion. Like, I look at Guild Wars 2 today, and all the stuff that it's introduced, even the temporary content that we're now missing out on, stuff that has been added through the feature packs, refinements to world versus world, though minimal, have changed it quite dramatically from when the game originally came out. Fixes to the way even just like dungeon partying works, fixes to dungeon rewards, fixes to mini pets, the wardrobe, everything. And the game is so much better now than it was all that time ago, and yet we kind of expected to have price drops. You know, for a totally new player who's never experienced the franchise at all, the game graphically still looks as good and as comparable to any other AAA game that comes out today, particularly in the MMO space. And so you can say, wow, for $50 people today are getting so much more, and yet we're all also expecting a price drop. Really odd. You know, the rules should be different for games that are constantly being updated, but can you imagine if they tried to up the price? It would be ridiculous. It would be a death sentence. Anyway, so the first real question comes from Shrimp1 about a week ago. He said, hey WP, I was walking around Garenhof and I noticed something that intrigued me. There is a huge gate among the houses to the far southeast of it. Where could that gate take us, if anywhere? The zone right to the east of it seems to be the domain of winds, that's the dominion of winds, but this is modern Tyrian architecture, not Tengu we're seeing. I wonder if this is somewhere the elementals that protect the village come from. Could this mean a pact within the Tengu and is Garen, or maybe hints of the wizard being in fact a Tengu himself? I'd love to hear your opinions on this. So a couple of things to note. That gate you can see there, I did a video speculating about this a long time ago. You see those gates in many places in Guild Wars 2. It looks like at launch they had some vague notion, some vague idea in my opinion, to add more dungeons to the game. Of course, this is something we've never seen them do. They decided pretty early dungeons weren't worth focusing on and dissolved their dungeon team. We haven't seen any flat out new dungeons, but there are a lot of places. There's one in Ebonhawk, there's one pretty interesting place. It's not the same kind of gate, but in the Black Citadel there is a lift with a very clear portal there that talks about how there was a weapon being developed by the Char to deal with the ghosts, and it would be this elevator that would take you down to this facility. Seemed like a location of a dungeon. This gate in Garenhof seemed like a location for a dungeon. The Great Collapse had a very similar place, but of course that was changed into the Crown Pavilion ultimately. They looked like they were setting up for new dungeons, and that's just what I believe this was. I think that was going to be the plot of one of them. Maybe even something they had significant development put into already, ideas, concepts about the dungeon, but just never made it in for launch. Now, when do I ever see us going through that gate? I'm not sure. I don't know whether we can say there that the wizard is a Tengu, though. It's possible. You have to remember that when the Dominion of Winds, when the Tengu walled everything off, that wizard's tower used to be within the realm of those walls, but it was moved. Whoever was in charge of it didn't want to be within the Dominion of Winds, or the Tengu, at least at the time, didn't want it within their bounds, and so it did move. If you look at its location from Guild Wars 1, it was much further south, much closer to Sanctum K, and now, of course, it's pushed up into a largely new location. I think most likely, if you just look at it in terms of pure story, the other side of that gate is just a bit more of Garenhof we haven't really seen, and yeah, there's probably more elemental activity there, and ultimately some kind of path, maybe even a big manor, and a secret teleporter in there or something that would ultimately bring you into the castle. At that point, I'm just inventing my own stories about how we'd get there, but, you know, I wouldn't be surprised, something like that. The next question is from Daniel Downey, who says, hey WP, can you do a build video on your ranger or the thief that you're using in this video? previous video showed off my thief, who I very rarely play on my channel. It's really not that impressive of a build, so I very much doubt it. Thief I'm pretty bad with in PvE. I really struggle with keeping my initiative over 50% so that I can get some of the damage buffs, and I'm pretty terrible with knowing exactly when to start heart seeking, exactly when to stop cloak and daggering, stuff like that. The build that you saw there, I don't have anything interesting to touch upon that other people in the community haven't done already. It's just a pure Zerk thief build with, you know, some of the most brain dead obvious choices you can go for with your traits. If you want to look at something like that, just look up thief build Zerk online and you'll see basically, and you'll see what I was running. The more interesting thing about the footage last week, I thought, was the fact that the staff that you get in that mission can apply swiftness to enemy characters, to the undead. I thought that was pretty amazing. There's some signs in awe of those old boon systems. In Ra, for example, you can find swiftness that stacks intensity and all kinds of weird things that you have to look in the odd places of the game to find now. The next question is from Crystal Rose, who says, another inquiry. Do you think that there will ever be more things to do in the game besides fighting? If you want to go out in the world, you fight. If you want to play a game like Keg Brawl, it's still fighting. The only thing that isn't is crafting. I kind of wish the game was more immersive and being able to sit in chairs or go out fishing and whatnot. And yeah, even crafting, in my opinion, is pretty boring, is one of the worst things you can really do in the game. For me, anyway, I can't stand Guild Wars 2's crafting. I've never really been a huge crafter in games, but I just find the whole thing so petty and annoying and time-sinking. It's a bit better now that they've refined the UI with the most recent feature pack, where you can climb up and down trees without having to use the list on the left, but still, crafting really isn't a great substitute. I think maybe you are being a little bit too harsh. There are some, especially when you consider stuff like activities, if they're fair game. Stuff like Sanctum Sprint isn't technically fighting. And a lot of what you do out in the world, especially the regular open world, let's be honest, you don't have to fight stuff, you just run past. So there is an element of exploration, it's just they don't cater to explorers that well beyond pretty environments. There's not much stuff you can interact with or read and, you know, find books around, those kinds of things that that kind of drags that whole non-combat element of the game down. It's funny, people might frown at it, but one thing I think RuneScape as a game did incredibly well was pretty much anything in that entire game you could examine and get some flavor text, and it meant that even though graphically it really wasn't that interesting, there was a lot of value to be gained in exploring just by interacting with things, and especially how that ultimately tied into the way questing worked in that game was a lot of fun, and Guild Wars 2 does lack this. The most obvious non-combat thing that I think most MMOs want to have, beyond crafting I suppose, is fishing. One thing, again, Guild Wars 2 kind of misses out on is many games will give you a crafting branch to the game, but also gathering. Gathering is an important thing. There can be skill trees tied to gathering, different mini-games even associated with them, and fishing would be, you know, one of these very prominent ones. Guild Wars 2 is just like, here, look, there's these 3 pieces of gear, buy some of them on the gem store, they're unlimited, equip them on your character, and you never have to think about them ever again, and you just go and press F on a ton of stuff. You know, there's no depth there. I do think one day we will get fishing. It should be well known in the community by now that if you have noticed, there is no fish or underwater related food at all within chefing. There was a hint in the most recent patch about how there could be ascended cooking coming in, of course, with this bloodstone dust kind of idea. And I know many people have speculated in the past that ascended cooking will be like pure fishing kind of stuff, and that would be kind of cool. But now I'm pretty doubtful about that, though I do believe one day we will get fishing. And they left all of that stuff out. They have announced to us before, they left fish cooking out because they wanted the space to be able to make a decent fishing game later. There are, of course, a million different ways they could do fishing. To me, something that's really casual you can do maybe as an AFK kind of thing, but that incentivizes people to travel to all the different bodies of water around the world. So you would have this cool experience of, you know, you're a first-time player, you're exploring through the Shiver Peaks, you travel to Timberline Falls, usually a dead map, but has this beautiful river running down it, and as you travel through this map, you have a chance of finding other players who are sat around, you know, the lakes and these beautiful areas actually fishing, and you say, oh, hi, how's it going? Find different fish in different areas of the world. There's a lot of depth they could go to. It's just whether they think it's worth going to that depth. Again, my main thing with any feature like this is for them to really give it the time it needs, for it to really feel like it fits in an update. It can't be a fishing only update. People would be pretty sad about that. I think it's the perfect kind of thing that they could add with an expansion. Then we'll leave it there. Also, yeah, sitting in chairs, that was like my favorite thing about MapleStory. Ultimately, I don't think it would mean very much for Guild Wars 2, but it would be cool. Next question is from NickCouncil581, who says, hey WP, what do you think about the idea of reanimation? Also, if you had the power to reanimate any character from Guild Wars 1, who would it be and why? So by reanimation, do you just mean the idea of bringing someone back to life, but not like as an undead or whatever, just have them back? I think probably it doesn't really fit in this universe. It would kind of suck. I think if you have any fantasy work or any work at all where this is a thing, it really undermines any sense of risk for characters, right? Like, the idea of a character dying is like the ultimate thing you can be scared of and engage with as the audience, right? And then the second someone just brings something back to life wholly, as if nothing ever happened, oh, that's a fast track to making it feel like everything's pointless, isn't it? Anyway, if it was going to happen, I think the most interesting character in the lore, at least for the story right now, to just throw back in the mix, who would really shake things up, who would potentially answer some mysteries, who would be interesting, would be Vizier Kilbron. I think he'd be really interesting with the ideas of the White Mantle and the Massat and stuff, and how we never really knew his true motives for releasing the Titans, not like the whole story. The hint that they gave in Guild Wars 2 when you climb his tower, and you see he's got like this bust of a Massat, and you interact with it, and it says it looks like it's been struck with a blade multiple times, as if the Vizier had some secret, dark hatred for the Massat. Why did he have this hatred for them? It'd be really, really cool to just see him come back. And also, he's an evil guy, right? So, you know, any situation where you're allied with someone who is potentially very evil anyway, that would be cool. I think he'd just be a really oddball, and another nice throwback to some of the earlier stories we had too, right? The next question is from Jine1, who says, would you like to see profession-specific armor reintroduced into Guild Wars 2 like they had in Guild Wars 1? And if it was introduced, how do you think it should be implemented? Now, the video I put up on Concrete Ducks today, I sort of rambled for a little bit about the idea of different stat sets not feeling important enough, or us not having very much choice. And a big problem with that is that it ties into the class diversity too. I think Guild Wars 2 has very diverse classes and they feel very different, but one way that sort of undermines that is the fact that if you're medium armor, you can make your guy look exactly the same whether he's a thief or an engineer or what. And I do think that kind of sucks. So yeah, I would love to see profession-specific armor come back into the game, but I don't think they'll ever do it because it's too much effort. Even to add one set of like profession-specific armor for everyone is mental. The amount of work that goes into this, and what such a small slice of the community that could actually wear that armor in the end. It would, I don't know, it wouldn't sit very well with me. What I would very much like to see in Guild Wars 2 is more armor that is very, very expensive, okay? And so basically I'm talking about alternate skin sets for Ascended armor. In Guild Wars 1, one of the staples, the main things that kept people in the game grinding for cosmetics was the idea of 15k armor, right? It wasn't statistically superior to your other options, but it was fairly expensive. Normal armor would cost you just 1 platinum each to buy, each piece, while this armor would cost you 15 platinum for each piece. And then you'd have to go through all 5 or 6 pieces, right? So it would be very expensive, and this was something that actually had prestige, and I don't know whether it's just that I'm older now and I don't care so much about these things, whether I feel like weapons don't carry the same weight, but I do think Guild Wars 2 is missing that in terms of armor. The only real prestige armor that exists in the game is the default look for Ascended armor, I guess to an extent, and then what, Worm armor? What else do we really have? I'd love to have that feel of 15k armor come back. It doesn't have to be profession specific, but that would be something fun that we could grind for, right? There's so much that gets added through the gem store. I can agree with these people who complain and say, why can't we have it, you know, 1 for 1? Something comes in the gem store, put a real one in the game too. But the fact that you can buy gems with gold, I don't know, it complicates things an awful lot. The next question is from Comet Fireclaw1, who says, have you ever thought about being a voice actor? Because you do some really quirky voices on your LPs, and it sounds like something you're having a blast with. I do not think that the stupid-ass voices I do on my LPs are worthy of any kind of voiceover work. I did a little bit of voiceover work a while ago. It was probably one of the most fun things I have done in the past few years. Like, I didn't get paid for it or anything. If you guys ever play Skywind, I did the voices of pretty much all the male Ultimate in that game. It was crazy fun. It's weird to me. I have always watched interviews of voice actors who talk about the character that they voiced, and they say, oh, you know, like, Anna is such an interesting character to have played. She's she's so quirky and lighthearted, but she has all these deep things that she feels about her sister, you know, stuff like that. And I've always sort of been a bit cynical when I see voice actors talking about the characters, like, come on, you don't really believe this, it's just a character, you don't have to talk about them as if they're real. But when you actually do voice acting, and you really want to do it well, and you start so for me, when I was doing the Elder Scrolls stuff, you read a lot about the stories, the quests that they were involved in, the lore of the world, and there's really a lot of depth in the subject material. It's so fun! It's like taking role-playing to the max. It was amazing. So, it's a secret little thing of mine that I really do want to get back into doing more voice acting. It's just I don't really know where I'd start. It's a very crowded space, and in terms of actually putting on voices, I don't think I have very much talent for it at all. But yeah, you asked me a question about something I do care a lot about, and I thought was really, really fun. I think if I could go back to school and someone said to me, hey, what kind of job do you want to do? Look, we'll help you. You know, you get your careers counselor. Probably one of the best answers I would give them now is I want to get into voice acting when I'm older. Voice acting all the way. And that would be a very, very cool thing to do for a career. Anyway, there you go, guys. That's the Q&A for today. As I say, a little bit more Guild Wars 2 stuff. Link in the description for the Concrete Duck videos down there. And if you have any questions of your own, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. And I guess I will see you tomorrow, where we'll have maybe some Mythbusters, summary of the story so far, preparations for the next patch, something like that. Anyway, cheers, guys. Have a great evening. See you next time.